Hello, Andreas. How are
He-
you?
Hello, I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
Yes, I'm fine, thank you. I have a day of gardening to do because as you know, I've been away and it's rained a lot here and it's been quite sunny. So I was away for 2 months. So I've done half of the garden or the backyard yesterday. A good bit of outdoor exercise in nature.
Nice. And
So
I can imagine that's grounded without your shoes on.
oh yes, I've got grounding shoes, so I've got sort of leather shoes with a copper rivet in them, I couldn't really do it barefoot here because there's thorns, and
Uh,
I've got loads of rose bushes and stuff, which
yeah.
people might be able to see if I move the camera because they're all starting to flower as well.
hmm
So anyway, it's really great to talk to you. Sorry, I was a little bit late because I was doing my lake swim and it just took longer than I thought, and then as I wasn't quite ready. So as I can see, you've got like a beach background behind you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the sea is basically right there, so it's like 50 meters from where I live. So I go every single morning. Is the lake close to where you live as well?
Yeah, it's about a 20-minute drive, but the temperature of it is pretty good for cold thermogenesis because it was
Oh,
13
nice.
degrees. It was 13 degrees C this morning, but I have gone in it when it's been about 9, which is so cold I have to wear gloves. So I think 13 degrees C is going to be something in the 50s for Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And it's getting into the 40s when it's below 10. So it's a kind of totally different water experience. So where you are, what's the temperature of the
Oh,
ocean
oh my God.
approximately?
It's so warm at the moment. I mean, it's probably something like 24 degrees or something like this. It's really, really warm. Like I remember when I was going in the winter in January, it was maybe 17 was the lowest, which
Mhm.
was quite impressive for Cyprus, really, because the sun is quite warm even in the winter. So if it's unobstructed, if there's no clouds in the sky, then it definitely feels like so nice to get in the really cold water, and then especially in the midday sun, when the UV is the highest, even though the UV is not that much even in the winter, it still feels really nice and therapeutic
Oh yeah,
to do that.
definitely, because it's a really nice day today. So I had the UV light and also the cold of the lake and also the grounding. So for people who are just joining, if we maybe say to people what this is going to be about, it can be about anything related to health. Because I know you're a movement expert, but also you do other things as well. And I think a lot of people sometimes think that the grass is greener on the other side in different locations. And
Mm.
personally, for me, I wouldn't want to live in Cyprus at this time of the year because it can get like is it a bit like Crete and places like that and Rhodes? It can get up to sort of 40 degrees or more. That'll be over 100 Fahrenheit, and then it
Yeah,
becomes
like 45 degrees. The hottest that I ever witnessed, it was 55 degrees one summer when it was insane. Like it was unbearable to go outside. You just felt like it was like a hot air con, and you
yeah.
just walked out the door like you were in your house and it was a little bit cooler in the house. And as soon as you exited the door, it was just like it hit.
So what he's talking about is that even though getting lots of sun is really vital for all aspects of health, there comes a point where it gets so hot in certain countries, it can become detrimental. So we're going to just carry on talking about this because for people in the UK who sort of follow people like Dr. Cruz, he does be overly harsh on the UK, and we've got lots of benefits here for health. And our summers can be really good. Hi, so you're back. I was just talking while you were away. So I think you were saying that in places like Crete and Cyprus and stuff like that, it can get so unbearably hot in the summer. And this would be the same for places like maybe on the equator. Some places like Dubai
Yeah.
can get crazily hot. Mexico can, some of the states like Arizona, I've been to Nevada, that can get extremely hot. And it comes to the point where you've got this amazing sun and this heat. So what's the best way for people to navigate this temperature? What can they do for exercise? What do you do to get
Mm,
around this? Because it can actually be really dangerous. I mean,
yeah.
when it's gone well over 100 Fahrenheit, so you were saying it can get up to, it went over 51, so that would something be like 120 Fahrenheit. But even for me, when it got to about 33 degrees C in Georgia, that was sort of going into the 90s. It was starting to become prohibitive. as in the risk of burning is kind of quite high because the UVI there was up to like 11. And
Yeah.
then, you know, I like exercising outside, but there comes a point where, you know, it's so hot that for certain people it could be really unpleasant, but also potentially dangerous because, you know, people who overdo saunas, there's potential sort of risks there. So maybe if you want to say what you do when it gets crazily hot.
Yeah, so basically, I don't really change anything in my routines because I'm kind of used to it, right? Because I was born here, like my whole life I lived here, but I only went away for around 7 to 8 years for my studies and for living abroad in Finland, where my partner Tina is from. And basically, like when we moved back here, I acclimatized really, really well because in Finland, I used a lot of the quantum practices. You know, I did red light therapy every morning and every evening. You know, I was embracing the cold. I was following more of a, you know, animal-based ketogenic diet towards the end of living in Finland. And yeah, and when we came here, I got tanned extremely easily. I was so surprised how quickly I tanned, and I actually didn't burn. But basically what I try to do is to not spend that much time in the sun because your body tells you, you know, really quickly. So I try to get obviously the morning light, which is not harsh at all on the body. It just feels like it's amazing for the hormones and it wakes you up gradually in the morning time. And then in the middle of the day, like even now that we're talking, it's getting quite hot to me, and the temperature is constantly increasing. So as you can see, like it's just dripping off me like the sweat.
Yeah.
So it just keeps running through. And of course, this can get a little bit dangerous, you know, for dehydration and electrolyte imbalances and things like that. But what I make sure to do is to make sure I'm taking enough electrolytes, adding enough salt to my foods, and just not overdoing the sun. So if I sat outside and had a conversation with you, I'm not going to go and lay in the sun later on because it's not necessary. You know, I feel like my skin has gotten enough of a stimulation and I've got, you know, got enough vitamin D that are what I actually need because the hotter it is and the higher UV, the quicker I can accumulate. So it just feels unnecessary to stay in the sun the whole day. And the biggest mistake that I see in places like Cyprus or in hot countries is the overabuse of sunscreen. And basically, people are so afraid of the sun and they are wearing sunglasses and hats and sunscreens, and they think because they are doing that, they can stay in this type of sun all day, which is extremely dangerous because who says just because you are putting something on your skin, you can defy the laws of nature and break the laws of nature and stay out in the sun all day just because you have something that protects your skin. So in the end of the day, like the damage is still going to occur. You're still going to accumulate a lot of heat in your body. You're still going to probably burn as well, even with sunscreen.
But also with
So
sunscreen, I think it's really important for people to know it blocks the UV, but it allows more blue and cyan light in, and that penetrates deeper because UV, some people say it's a resonance effect, or it might the B will penetrate maybe a few millimeters, but the blue and the cyan can get deep into the sort of basal cells. So you're actually opening yourself up to another sort of particular cancer risk because you're blocking the UV. And it's like everything, you've interfered with nature, and
yeah,
there's always going to be the unforeseen consequences. And I think you're completely, well, I know you're correct that, you know, people put on factor 50 and, you know, if you use the sunglasses, again, you're stopping the signals from the sun getting into your eyes.
yeah,
So your advice for people going, because a lot of people in the UK go to Crete and Cyprus in the summer and places like that, Rhodes. My mum and I are going in October, but we kind of know how to play the
yeah,
game and avoid the
yeah,
sun. So would you just say to people, it's really important to go in and out of the heat, maximize the morning sun if people want to do
yes.
exercise outside, and then you don't need sun cream because it just tempts you to be in the sun for longer than you should be. And you'll probably burn anyway,
Yeah.
or get some kind of heat stroke.
Exactly, exactly. And dehydration and also, you know, lower blood pressure and so on. And people who are taking medications, you know, could easily faint or even die, you know, if you are losing too much fluids and your fluid volume decreases dramatically and your blood pressure drops, you can easily, you know, faint. So it can be like quite dangerous, especially if you haven't acclimatized your body. So of course, what me and you promote is that people are, in the sun all year round, because this is what conditions your body and actually teaches your body how to acclimatize to the intensity of the sun and the brightness and everything like this. So that eliminates the need for sunglasses or even wearing sunscreens. Of course, we're not telling people to overabuse the sun. Like, the sun has been here for billions, trillions of years, and we have evolved for millions of years on the earth with the sun without any sunscreen. And that's like something that we have discovered or started using in the last 50, 100 years. So we are kind of defying the laws of nature and thinking that we can, go against that, or we can trick ourselves in a way so we can overuse it. But in reality, what we want to do, we want to look at animals. What do they do? When an animal is too long in the sun, it goes in the shade.
Oh
But like,
yes.
for human is like, okay, I feel like I'm getting burnt. Let me apply a little bit more sunscreen. It doesn't make any sense, because it's basically like sitting inside, behind glass, where it distorts the light spectrum. We're getting certain frequencies of light, which are we're not getting the full spectrum light, we don't know what kind of effects that has on the body, especially, when you look at the studies on isolated UV light, what it does to animals and the skin cancer risk, for example.
But yeah, the
But
studies
it's
on
not
animals were done on bald mice, and mice are nocturnal, so they don't really go out in the sun anyway.
exactly, exactly. So basically what happens is that, we're just not looking at what nature is doing. And I believe that's just because we're totally disconnected from our rhythms and routines. And what's really nice about circadian rhythms and quantum biology, it just makes you in tune with nature. So as you are outside more, you are able to observe more animals, the nature around you, whatever you have available, wherever you live. You notice certain patterns. Certain animals come out at certain times of the day, or the birds start singing, and so on. And this is all like teaching us something subconsciously without us realizing it.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, like you said, I have a black cat, and he will go in the sun a bit, and then all of a sudden he'll rush out of it and go in the shade, because obviously he's full of melanin and he
Yeah.
absorbs more heat. But I don't see him, even in the UK, when it's only like June now. Oh no, someone just asked a question. So no, we don't. Someone's asked a question. No, Andreas is specifically saying don't use sunblock for sun protection, because first of all, it can make you stay out longer than you should, but
Yeah,
also,
and
like I was saying,
burn yourself.
it blocks the UV, so more blue and cyan light get in, and they penetrate a lot deeper, and it gets concentrated, and it's not natural to have that much blue and cyan light in your basal cells. So that, and also there are all sorts of chemicals in sunblock as well. So Andreas is saying, rather than go out in the sun continuously, go in and out, like animals do. Like my cat, he's black, and he goes out in the sun, and then he'll come into the shade, and then he'll be
Yeah.
out in the sun again. And
Yeah.
also, when it's very hot here, which it can be, the animals don't really go out in the solar noon. They'll be out, they sort of avoid that time, because I'd imagine at solar noon, even now in Cyprus, it's pretty hot, and the UV index is probably something like 9, I'd imagine, and it could be even more, when it gets into July and August. So what do you do around noon and 1? I mean, culturally, people in Spain have siestas and stuff. What do people in Cyprus do?
Well, here in Cyprus, our lunchtime is typically around 12 to 1 o'clock, which is around when, the sun is the highest in the sky. So you can imagine, after eating in general, it creates a little bit this drowsiness, especially in the heat. No matter whether you're eating keto or whether you are incorporating carbs, it still makes you sleepy, just because it's just that time of the day when it's so warm and you get that overwhelm, and then all the blood is going to your digestive system, and then you just feel like you want to have a nap, to recharge your batteries. And that's typically what people do. But unfortunately, because of the system, the way that, jobs are built, of course, everybody's indoors. They have air condition under blue lights, close to non-native EMFs, more than ever now, because technology is all the time improving. And basically, like, people are not actually sleeping when they normally would, but they're not either embracing the temperature. So if you think about that, you've got a regular 9 to 5 job, you are going to be inside all day, you're not going to be getting the natural light. But it's great for individuals who have, because in Cyprus we have a lot of tourism jobs, because as you can imagine that we rely a lot on the tourism. We don't have we don't really produce much. All we produce is like halloumi, olive oil, um, watermelons. What else do we produce? Yeah, and goat's milk. Like these are the kind of things that we make. It's not really a country where we actually get a lot of money from making stuff. We rely a lot on the tourism side of things. So there is a lot of tourism jobs, a lot of tour guides, boat tours, and hotel workers and stuff like that. A lot of those people are able to be outside more, but again, at the same time, they're outside too much, because they're outside in the extreme heat and they have to work very long hours because the pay here in Cyprus is quite low. So people are working 8 to 9 hours a day with very little breaks in between.
Okay. Because you've already provoked loads of questions. I'm not going to go into the Finland too much because I wanted Timu. He must have heard of him. He organises lots of biohacking conventions. He's Finnish, and he said he'd come on to talk about doing health and wellness in Finland. But I wasn't sure if Tina was Danish or Norwegian. I thought I'd never asked
Finnish.
her.
She's Finnish.
She's Finnish, because this is. I'm not going to digress too much because, as you can tell, I'm trying to do a series of lives doing how to do quantum biology or any kind of health in climates that have problems. And I've been to Finland myself twice, and I liked it. But also, again, there's the bizarre light cycles in Finland. And also, I've seen Tina with videos. Definitely people should follow you and her. There's lots of really good movement, and she is pretty tanned now. And when I went to Finland, a lot of people would look typically Finnish with extremely blonde hair, very pale skin and blue eyes. So how did her health improve? Or was she healthy already in Finland, and then she just found moving to somewhere hotter took her to a new level? Or did she just, was she always how she is?
So basically, as a child, she always got tanned way more than her family. So she was a little bit of an outlier. However, she had an autoimmune condition when she was younger, and this persisted, and it kind of got, let's say, postponed or put on hold for a couple of years when she was younger. And then afterwards, when we were studying in Scotland, we lived in a bit of a moldy house, and basically that triggered a whole load of other symptoms. And she had to take some, immunomodulating medication because she couldn't tolerate the symptoms. And then because she got other symptoms from taking that medication, she had to come off. And I was grateful that she came off at the time, because back then I wasn't that much aware about, the natural health perspectives. And so I kind of knew intuitively, though, that this is not something that you want to be on for the rest of your life. And basically what happened was, like, she had all kinds of symptoms in her body. She had this kind of arthritis type of symptoms. She had swelling in her knees. She wasn't obviously tanned in Scotland because very low light in UV. And we went to the Netherlands. We did our master's degree there, and it had way more light there. And we started embracing nature way more, because we started doing a lot of research about how can we get over her condition. And for many, many years we battled with it, and we managed to overcome it completely. And now she's completely symptom free, as if she doesn't have anything at all. And when we were in Finland the last year before we came to Cyprus, that was when she started to really transform her health, when we transitioned from a plant-based diet to an animal-based diet, because it felt like that was like a really big needle mover in terms of, the gut health and the mental health. And also because we were exercising a lot, it supported our biology way more. And so coming to Cyprus as well was almost like the last thing that she needed, the part of the puzzle, which we needed to utilize so she can actually heal. And so when she started building her melanin and embracing the sun more, that's actually when she fully healed herself. And now I would say that she's thriving.
Oh, that's really interesting, because I was listening all the way, because in Finland, because there's plenty of seafood, and also there is the unusual light cycle, but then saunas are huge. I think there are more saunas than people, and then the saunas are good, and you've got lots of there's nice natural areas. So I would say for her, you know, she probably was okay in Finland, and then I think Scotland probably finished her off, because if you add mold in on top, and then the Scotland something, I think it's like the 50 sort of fifth latitude, maybe even up to 60. So would you say that her symptoms of her autoimmune situation were there when she was in Finland? And did she eat a plant-based diet in Finland, or did she
Her
eat
whole
a thing?
life,
Okay.
her whole life from
Okay.
since a young age, because she couldn't tolerate certain animal products when she was younger. For example, if she ate chicken or yogurt and stuff like that, it would really trigger, you know, like a response in the body. And so her whole life she stayed primarily plant-based, but she always ate really, really good. I like high quality nutrition in terms of, you know, organic and, you know, not processed. So when we met each other in Scotland, where we did our nutrition degree together, that's where we met each other on the first year of our studies. And then I also decided to try plant-based diet because I had never done it before. And I just wanted to see what it was all about. You know, and it's a nice way to resonate if in a relationship. It's kind of easier if you're cooking the same meal rather than two separate meals, you know. And go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say I've also tried plant-based, and like everything, I'm very curious and open, and I think there's everything has its place and purpose in the universe and on the planet. Because I've got friends who live at the equator who are completely plant-based, but they literally live outside. So
Yeah,
yeah, but I think also for Finland or Scotland, it's just you know, I haven't got anything against any ways of eating, and I completely understand why people do it. But Scotland and Finland are and probably the UK are just completely the wrong climate,
yes,
because also we can't grow produce all year round. And I don't know about Finland and agriculture because I didn't study that properly, but in terms of what would actually grow seasonally and locally in Finland and northern Scotland, because you would know more, what kind of sort of plants would there be in Finland? Because you've talked about what you grow in Cyprus. I knew it was melons and I knew olives.
yes.
What about Finland and produce? Because I'd say it's more of, you know, that the fish is what really captivated me. And also the Scandinavians are excellent with sort of meat sort of preparation as well. And sort of,
Yes.
yeah.
I know that they like reindeer. I
Yes,
remember
I remember.
I
Yeah.
tried reindeer in Finland. It was amazing. It was so good. But basically, yeah, a lot of fish, a lot of salmon. You know that by the prices in the market. You know, you go there and it's so cheap.
I
Oh my
know.
God, you can buy a whole salmon like this for 14 euros. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Whereas here in Cyprus, if you try to buy the same thing, it's probably going to cost you 45 euros. But of course, because it's imported, you know, of course, it makes total sense. But yeah, like they have the fish and they have like sometimes the moose or reindeer meat
Mhm.
and or deer meat, and then they have a lot of beef. They've got a lot of cows,
Yeah.
which is really nice locally, and they have a lot of
Oh,
berries,
yes,
loads
of
and
course.
loads of
And
berries. Like they freeze
mushrooms, of
them, so
course. Yeah.
basically, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I loved all kinds of berries there. It was amazing because every day I used to eat something different because they had all kinds. They had lingonberries and blueberries and raspberries, blackberries, so many, and the sea buckthorn as well, which is extremely good for you. So they have all those, and in certain seasons also they have the mushrooms, and then they also have a lot of squash as well at some time of the year. I used to like the spaghetti pumpkin. It's called spaghetti pumpkin because when you put it in the oven and you cook it, like afterwards when you go to, you know, scrape it with the fork, it comes into strings. So it's a little bit like spaghetti.
Oh yeah, I've never tried that before, and I bought one when I was in Atlanta for the first time. It's just called a spaghetti squash there,
Yes,
so it's kind of related to zucchinis and pumpkins and those family of and butternut squashes. So yeah, I'm sure that spaghetti squash exists in the UK. I've never seen one because I have noticed that there's less sort of plants and vegetables for sale, but they're very much, you know, focusing on the UK only. Because I went to a farmer's market yesterday and I could even buy cucumbers that were grown in Lincoln, and all of the produce, there was much less produce on the plant stall, but all of it was from the UK.
hmm,
So, you know, some people, and I have noticed less bizarre fruit and vegetables in our shops, you know, that obviously definitely, you know, didn't come from this country. So
yeah,
yeah, I think we kind of accidentally went into Finland, because it's actually quite a good contrast to talk about living in Finland and being healthy, and
yeah,
then living in Cyprus and being healthy. Because I'm sure there are people like Timu and other Finns we know. Kappa Health the medicinal mushrooms, people like Eric Puro, they all happily live in Finland. And when I was there was lots of very healthy Finns because we did that many saunas. And as you know yourself, you have to go in naked really because it's very rude to have
It's the
clothes
best
on.
thing in the world. It's the
Yeah.
best thing.
But also, you get, it's, first of all, there it's rude because it might be you're hiding something, but also the bathing suits damage the wood in the saunas,
Yeah.
and it's just bad. So you get to see what the population looks like, and I can, as you probably saw yourself, there were lots of sort of very fit men and women of all ages in Finland. So obviously there's ways to be healthy in a country with terrible light. I mean, I think there's
Absolutely.
places in northern Norway and certain parts of Sweden that are even more weird. And I think Alaska and Iceland can get strange light cycles, but then the Icelandic people are, very healthy. And like you said, the thing that's really got them is the technology and the indoor living, whereas they've managed for a very long time eating seafood. It's more magnetic as well, the further away from the equator and closer to the poles. So you've got that benefit there. And then all, like you said, the abundance of seafood. But I think it's the tech that's getting the Scandinavians because it's sort of enough to push people over the edge. They can just about manage with the weird light cycles, but then if you add in all of these mobile phones, Wi-Fi being left on all night, people not turning it off, and just more and more and more tech, and people working under blue light, I think that's sort of something that's a real problem in all countries, but then sort of Finland and as well. So maybe just to backtrack to sort of your expertise, and because I do follow you and Tina, so I kind of know anyway, but maybe for people who've never met you before, what kind of stuff do you teach people? Because I know obviously movement is big. That's same for me, my background, I kind of just don't make as much videos about that as you and Tina.
So you are an expert in Pilates, right?
Oh yeah, I started off in Pilates, but then I trained in somatics. Then I did gymnastics coaching, and then I did a lot of martial arts when I was young, and I can play squash and soccer. And it gets to the point where you've got that big of a movement vocabulary. That it's really easy to learn a new sport, and
Yes.
Then I learned Olympic lifting, and I understand sort of biomechanics. So I'm more about, and I trained in Z Health as well and functional neurology. So it is something I had like good innings of 13 years of doing that. But then I think because I started sport so young, and I've always really enjoyed movement, and thankfully I've never had a big injury or anything, even though I've done things like gymnastics in my 40s, and squash and soccer is like a good way to get really bad knees. And then anything to do with like Olympic lifting and snatches and deadlifts, you can do your back in your 40s or more if you have bad form. So I'm very much about sort of no matter who somebody is, there's always movement they can do. I in lockdown, yes. I made a whole load of videos and sold them online, and it was just called Flawless Online Pilates, and it was just Pilates sitting and standing. And thousands and thousands of seniors bought it because, sure, some people can't get down on the floor and some people are 85, but no matter what, there's some kind of movement that everybody can do. And even if people, I can understand why people wouldn't like the gym. But then again, sort of movement wise, it's just never ending. There's so many things I'd like to learn movement wise. So I just think it's so important, and just going to the gym or doing something you hate is stupid, really, because you'll just stop doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all about consistency. And I love your view and approach to movement and exercise in general, because I believe that if we embrace all different training modalities and different forms of movement, it's the best, because your body is not designed to just do one specific repetitive movement. Like when you look at workers who don't exercise, but they just are at work and they are doing one specific repetitive movement, they get repetitive strain injury in the shoulder or wrist or back or something like this if they're moving always in the same direction. So this teaches you that the body loves and craves variety. And if we are experiencing pain in the body, it's because it's requesting change. Pain is a request for change. So that means change what? Change your habits and behaviors, change the way you move, change the way you breathe, because breathing is an internal form of movement, right? So it's like moving your internal organs, your fascial system, like everything inside of you, literally. just by the breathing. So breathing is super, super important as well in conjunction with holistic movement practices. And I'm also very big into, you know, resistance training as well at the gym, but also, you know, movement practices which are not taking place in the gym, which you don't need to take into the gym. You know, if you can do them outside, even better. So I believe moving on all fours is super, super important for the nervous system and also your fascial system and your mobility in general, and to bring a sense of safety to your body. And that's why me and Tina, we teach a lot of that, because everybody knows how to strength train, or most people know how to do, you know, resistance training, because it's just a straight up and down movement, backward and forward movement. So it's lacking a lot, of course, of functionality, a lot of rotation. And so when we are doing holistic movement practices, we are able to get a lot of that without overemphasizing the rotation, but that happens naturally through, you know, holistic movement, whether that is through kettlebells or steel maces, you know, battle ropes, TRX, rings, like gymnastics, like you did, or animal movement, primal movement close to the floor. And the best thing is, if you can do it outside and you can be grounded at the same time, you can get a whole load of benefits. You know, you can get the sunlight, you can get the electrons from the earth, and you can literally recharge your body in a very healthy way, and also make your fascia nice and pliable, and your nervous system to have a nice accepting effect. Because many, many times, if we put our nervous system under too much stress or under too much load, our body begins to tense up, and the reason is because it's trying to protect us. So stiffness is not a bad thing. The brain is always doing something for a reason. We just need to understand why is it doing it, and we need to try and relate to it and try and bring it and show to it that what we are doing is a safe thing by being close to the ground, by receiving more information from the hands and the feet and the eyes, you know, getting that proprioception, which is the information from our environment. Where is our body situated in space? All of this has to do, you know, with body control, body awareness, and balance, and it brings and unifies the body together. So I believe that doing, you know, primal movement in conjunction with resistance training and some yoga, for example, and some walking and some swimming, you can be like an overall well-rounded athlete. But if you do only one thing, then obviously you are not going to be good at everything. So, for example, resistance training is extremely good because it meets everybody where they're at. For example, a lot of people, might not be strong enough to get down on all fours on their hands and feet. So of course you can't do that at the beginning. So this is the beauty of resistance training, that you can start from 2 kilos or 5 kilos. You can meet your body where it's at. You can slowly, slowly strengthen it to the point where now you can start to, you know, place more load on your body and experiment and do more functional type of movements.
Oh no, I completely agree. And also about pain, it's sort of about proprioception, that our brain always needs to know where every single part of our body is in space. And that's where people often neglect the eyes and the inner ear, because if they're giving the brain poor information, it's again a threat. So that's why sports and stuff, or not necessarily sports, but sort of movements that encourage balance, or fixing your gaze, or looking in a certain direction, or sports where you've got to follow the ball with your eyes. Because
Yeah.
I agree also that you just said everybody can do HIIT or cardio, because all you've got to do is just get on a bike and go somewhere, or run up and down the stairs for a bit, and people can do that independently. Whereas, like you're saying, I think it's really important, if you want to learn a sport or some kind of movement, to be taught, because we develop so many bad movement patterns as we age. Because I like watching babies and children move, and when
Yes.
I was staying in Atlanta, my friend has an 18-month-old, and he can squat perfectly, and I like giving him things like grapefruits, because he picks it up exactly like a strong man would, with perfect form, and then he presses it to give it to me, and the form is impeccable, and he squats, and you know, he does things, and then he did almost a Turkish get up, and the way he moves, it's sort of so natural. And then with chairs, like, I think, what's the name, the guy who Mr. Alexander, with the Alexander technique, says a chair is one of the biggest abominations of our inventions. And then people sitting, or the other big problem is people on phones all hunched up and their postures sort of all out. So I do think it's a good idea for somebody to teach you. I still have like lessons from people, because you just need sometimes another pair of eyes to say, or
Yeah.
if you put your hand there, do that handstand like that, or you know, you're a bit out of line here, that's not straight. It does really help you. And I think, again, with all of the movements I see you do in your videos, I think the one I also really like the one, you know, when it's like the axe swing with the kettlebell on the stalk.
Yeah.
Again, you know, just copying somebody who can move really well is not the best idea. It's best to go and be shown how to learn how to do that, because it all builds up. And again, not to be impatient either, because that's why I just do stuff because I enjoy it now. Like, I'm much more after sports or the lake's fun because, you know, there's stuff to see, whereas people that are just doing exercise because they want to burn calories or something, it's no longer enjoyable. And that's when people can be impatient. Like you said, they can push themselves to a point where it's now counterproductive because there's so much cortisol. So again, having the novelty and fun element, or just doing something you've never done before with other people, I think is interesting, because it can get quite monotonous and boring on your own, always to exercise by yourself.
I like what you said about the calorie burning part, because I feel that that's a big myth that we need to boost right here, right now.
Okay, let's do it.
It's because I feel that, you know, you think that you're burning a lot of energy while you're exercising, but the majority of the energy that you want to be burning really is outside of the training. And that all determines what type of actual exercise are you doing. If you're going to go for a walk, yes, you're only going to utilize the energy that you're utilizing only during the walk, right? You're not actually breaking muscle down. You're not rebuilding muscle. You're not doing it at a high enough intensity for you to build muscle. So the more muscle we acquire, the higher our metabolic rate. And so we shouldn't be focusing so much on what we are burning during the exercise, but we should be focusing more, what are we doing? What are we stimulating in order to be able to increase our muscle mass, so we can increase our metabolic rate, so we can improve our insulin sensitivity, so we can tolerate more food, and we can even lose weight at the same time. So this is the beautiful thing about knowing how to program your exercise. So I like to differentiate between movement and exercise. I believe movement is something that you do. It's a biological necessity. You need to do it. You need to be able to do it from, you know, to get to A to B, to do your daily tasks, to go for your swimming, to go for your walking, your cycling. This is stuff that's not really going to build that much muscle mass unless you haven't done it ever. And of course, at the beginning, you know, like somebody who has been in a wheelchair a really long time and they start walking at the beginning, of course, they're going to build a substantial amount of muscle on their legs, right? But not a regular person who is, like, you know, able and fine, they're not going to build muscle from walking unless you do something like, you know, sprinting. Because sprinting is like the opposite part of the spectrum from walking. What is sprinting? Sprinting, you are going as fast as you can. It's like resistance training against gravity and against the air. So every single muscle fiber in your body is trying to go in one direction, and because of that, and you're trying to go as fast as you can, now you're creating so much muscle damage in your body that it actually has to get bigger so it can get stronger and it can get faster, because the body actually doesn't like to exercise. And when you actually put the body under stress, under load, and it gets fatigued, it says, well, I'm going to make you stronger so I don't need to feel like this the next time. But then you should do it again and again and again. And basically what happens is that you just keep getting stronger and stronger. Your body's like, give me a break. But then, you know, you keep on getting stronger. And now those things that were hard before are now easy, because the brain always works in perspectives. So when you are doing something really hard, then after, when that hard thing is over, now it feels easy for the brain.
Yeah, exactly. And what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, the hormetic effect. So yeah, that's, I was just laughing because it's like, that's, my mother really hates exercise and movement and has a million like straw man arguments about why it's bad. But also inherently just moving is painful. That's why we have these things like the PMRF and all these different pain gates in our bodies, that as we move, our frontal lobes can fire down, and it can cause sort of pain inhibition. So it sounds bizarre that, like you said, that moving is inherently sort of painful, but in order to improve at it, like you said, you've got to just keep doing it, because then your brain can't be bothered to, it thinks, okay, this is safe, I've got used to this now. Because I think I'm thinking of a lot of people who I used to work with who were in chronic pain, and they would do less and less and less, so their comfort zone would shrink, but also their their movement vocabulary got smaller
Yeah.
and smaller. So, and they developed more and more muscle imbalances and weaknesses, yet they would say, oh no, I can't, you know, even do 15 minutes of chair Pilates now because it's too painful.
Yeah.
So that's what will happen, is that it's one of these things, if you stop doing it, then that's what will happen, especially in your 40s. And I had lots of seniors who were sort of in their 70s and 80s, and they just said, if I stopped for a week, I'd never start again. And it's like you said, you've got to overcome this sort of pain barrier. But also, it reminded me of something I was listening to about meditation and sort of very deep spirituality and Kabbalah, that sometimes doing spiritual practices a lot, your body can then perceive painful experiences as something pleasurable. Because I've got plenty of friends, including myself, who actually get a kick out of the, you know, when it's really hard and you've got to fight through something, or,
Yes.
you know, people who do combat sports, which I've done, you know, or hockey, which I also played, which you can get really hurt in. There's some like weird, you know, there's some sort of way that we can also transmutate pain into pleasure,
Yes.
same as you can transmutate anxiety into excitement. So maybe if we want to sort of finish on something a little bit sort of going down that avenue of, even though it's painful for our body to exercise, it actually can be pleasurable. It depends how we frame it.
Exactly, exactly. So basically, like when we do something hard, obviously, you know, that we need to acknowledge that that hard thing is going to end at some point. So we just need to embrace it and make the most of it. At the beginning, it's just all about getting used to it. If you're not used to exercising in general, when you feel that lactic acid buildup, when you feel the burn in your muscles, when you feel like you're fatiguing, just know that that's when it counts the most. That's when you're actually yielding the biggest change, and you're literally pushing the roof higher and higher every single time. So what you're doing, you're just increasing your pain threshold, right? And you're also improving your CO2 tolerance if you are breathing through your nose. And that's another beautiful thing. So you don't experience so much breathing discomfort in exercise. You don't experience so much, you know, muscle burning and fatigue. And that's what you want to do at the beginning. Always the first 1 to 2 weeks when you're exercising, no matter who you are, you always feel like it's hard. Even if I take a really long break, let's say a month from exercise, and I go back to it, everything is going to feel like it burns like hell. But I love that feeling, because I, now that I've been training so many years, I don't get it so easy anymore. So to actually get that feeling, I need to push myself so much. And so you see, what happens is you get to a point where you start to seek the pain, because you start to acknowledge that that is when you are starting to yield change in your body. You know, when you are making progress in terms of strength or muscle hypertrophy, or even just your mental state. You know, it gives you something magic, and it's that moment when you put yourself that far and the sweat is dripping off you and you feel like you've done an amazing training, and then you feel really fulfilled, you know. So you've also like stimulated your dopamine centers.
Oh, absolutely. And also, you can get into flow states with exercise, and it can be anything from surfing to squash to gymnastics to even people go into trance states in Pilates and yoga. And I think flow states are also something that all human beings, we've all got the capacity to access these. And that's why, just looping back to sort of natural, that if we have regular sunlight, it can make sure that our dopamine system, our serotonin system, our endocannabinoid, which would be our cannabis system, our enkephalin and endorphin system, are all naturally regulated. Because if you start to fiddle about with these using substances, and then it means, I've found with people, it means getting into a flow state naturally can sort of be more difficult because you've disturbed your system, whereas people can get into all sorts of flow states mentally, and that you can get into them doing art or prayer or also or playing instruments. And I think you just reminded me when you were saying about the dopamine, but sometimes, and Steve Kotler, I've read lots of his books, and he is a very interesting person, that, you know, there is sort of like an equation. It requires a bit of a struggle and then some grit and perseverance. So, you know, it's one of these things that, and then you get your reward when all of a sudden a flood of your own natural neurotransmitters come out in a perfect combination. And this can be incredibly healing, but it can also be access sort of creative aspects of our brain that are normally sort of not available just because of sort of 9 to 5 living. So yeah, there's so much we could talk about. It's been like so fun doing this. We'll have to do it again.
Definitely, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, so I absolutely love the flow state. I find that there are specific type of activities that induce it quicker than others. So, for example, I would say that resistance training doesn't induce flow state
No.
because it's something hard and it's putting you into that fight and flight mode, and that's fine because you're doing that for on purpose. You're putting yourself in fight and flight. You know, you're fighting and flighting. But when you actually want to get into a flow state, you want to induce this feeling like where your body is moving, but you don't feel like you're moving. So it's like
Mm.
moving meditation in a way, you know, and this is why I love rope flow, if you've seen on my page, is when you move the rope around your body, but you don't jump through the rope. And this is incredible because it synchronizes the left and right hemispheres
Oh
of the
yeah.
brain because you're moving the rope in an infinite way across your body like this or around you in different techniques. And what it's doing is because you are using your hand-eye coordination as well and your body awareness, you can totally zone out while you're doing it. And so if you combine that with nasal breathing, which also assists with the flow state and the lymphatic system movement and the blood flow to the brain, you're really able to stimulate something in there which gets you into this deep meditative state. You don't feel like you're even moving, but you just feel amazing in your body. And the key is to just not push yourself to the point where it feels like it's getting fatiguing on the muscles, but to have just enough of an intensity where the sweat is just slowly dripping off you. So it's an endurance, almost like an endurance high, a little bit like running, where you're not running too fast, you're not running too slow. It's like that perfect rhythm where you can just sustain it forever. And that's when you get like into that flow state.
Oh, absolutely. Like, sometimes if you try too hard to do something, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's the trying, even just the fact of trying, just even to say I'm gonna go and do it, that already puts you out of a flow
Oh,
state.
absolutely. And then, I mean, there's things like somatics and Feldenkrais and Franklin method for people who say have movement, they're not ready for sort of big movement. So there's plenty of on the floor. But also, like I was saying, you can get into flow states, doing other things that's creative, like playing instruments. I mean,
Yes.
something I was just thinking about then is, march, brass bands that march, because they obviously, it's a group of people doing something really fantastic, making music in tune, but they're also exercising. And I don't see so many of these marching bands anymore. There used to be lots of them. So I think people I know who do that, they say they get into sort of like a
Mhm.
trance state, or they're in the zone. Because also if there's an audience who are clapping for them, that again sort of encourages the flow state. But yeah,
Mhm.
that's sort of a combination of movement. So the people playing trumpets and stuff outside, it's like light movement, being creative, stimulating the vagus nerve and doing
Yes.
something as a collective. So there's all sorts of ways that people can get movement and be outside that doesn't involve, because again, I think like you've said, people just, the gym can really turn people off. And then
Mhm.
trying to do Pilates outside is impossible because lots of it's sort of on your back. And people have said, "Oh, please, can we do Pilates in the park?" And I've said, "You'll hate it." And then we do it, and within 5 minutes, you can't stand the sun. So I think for outdoor
Yes. Yes.
activities, lying on the back. I mean, the standing poses in yoga are more doable as
Yeah.
as an outdoor activity. But there's so many different things you can do outside. And I think, like you said, just doing movement, as in gardening or playing with children in a paddling pool outside and stuff like that. Because the other thing I think is really important is to encourage children to be outside more. Because when I was a child, probably the same as you, we just played outside on bikes, and it was, I don't know why it's different now, but sure, there's like iPads and
Yeah.
stuff. But culturally, where you are in Cyprus, when you were young, did people and children play outside a lot?
Yes, I live next to a school, the school that I went to when I was young. So I just went there with my bike every single day, and I met with the other, gang with that had their bikes, and we were just, going around the school with our bikes and playing basketball until it was really late at night. I just remember that we were outside all the time
Mm.
in the summertime. The only thing was that when we were at school, we were just sitting for so many hours, and I feel that is like the hidden. Well, it's not hidden, it's in plain sight, the culprit for people's aches and pains and stiffness that
Mm.
they develop over the years. Because think about children, they are sitting in a chair 5, 6 hours every day from until they are, 16 or 17 years old. So of course, we start to develop all of these muscle imbalances and fascial tightness and pains later on in life.
Absolutely, and I think also in certain, I'd talked to sort of people all over the world, and sometimes in places like the US, there's hardly any lunchtime or break time, and when the children have it, they just do it inside. Whereas when I was at school, everybody was kicked out every break, whether it was
Yeah,
winter
same.
or raining, and then everybody was kicked out for lunch. I mean, you could buy food in the canteen, but you had to eat it and then get out again.
Yes.
So there was a lot more outside, and I think when I was at school, there's more hours of PE outside, and our school had a field, and we used to play things in that. Whereas now I've looked on curriculum, and it's kind of they've cut down on the amount of and also obviously thankfully there was no mobile phones. I can't imagine what it'd be like to going to the school I did in Cardiff if there was mobile phones and stuff, because at least people could just like be horrible to each other publicly and openly. Whereas I think the phones and the iPads, and there were video games, but there were things like Amstrads and Sega Mega Drives, and not everybody had them. And my parents would say, right, 1 hour of this and then out. So I think again the video games and then the phones for younger people. I think what we were talking about earlier about building a movement vocabulary from a very early age, and you reminded me when you were talking about all fours, because with the crossbody patterning, some babies go straight from sitting to walking, they don't crawl, and then as an adult they then have sort of neurological situations with movement, but you can recorrect that as an adult if they do all of the crawling and the stuff they didn't do as a baby.
Wow.
So there's this idea of,
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, no, it's really interesting. You've probably come across certain clients who, you can tell people who've been exposed to lots of different sports and movement, even as an adult, even when they're 60 or 70, they might have arthritis or other issues, but you can tell they're a mover. And then there are other people, I can tell that they've been a very academic person. Like with my clients, I can say it now, the absolute worst movers were people who are sort of doctors, scientists, people who just sat all day. And even though they are way more intelligent than me, their movements was just, and then there were people in the class who were cleaners or sort of people who did a lot of sort of other movement, who just kicked the butts of the doctors and the scientists at movement, because they've just had a lifetime of using their bodies. And like one of my friends has a cleaning business, and they have to sort of climb into funny places, and they have to carry, lift, twist. And she just said, people might laugh at me being a cleaner, but I have the best body ever, and also I earn loads more money than people think. And she said she wouldn't trade her work for anything, because she just said having a good body in her 40s and 50s from doing her job and money, why would she want something else? So I think this idea of embracing all movement, and especially for encouraging children to learn different sports, even if they don't like it, at least it gives them the chance to develop a movement vocabulary. I'm going to have to stop soon, because as you can hear, the aeroplanes are out now, because I live quite close to an airport. Which is a whole other topic, but they didn't bother me until I learned too much about non-native EMFs, but I can't do anything about them. And sometimes that's the best thing. If you can't do anything about it, just don't think about it.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing fantastic, because obviously you are following all the quantum practices. You're getting grounded every day. I mean, if you're doing that, you're able to discharge all that dirty electricity that you're accumulating in your body by living close to those areas, which I totally get. And even here where I live, I'm sure there are many neighbors and people who have their Wi-Fi's on, but every single day I'm out in the sun, getting grounded, making sure that my diet is good, protecting myself from the blue light at night, and doing all the good stuff. Because if we don't do that, then we don't repair our body, right? And so it's all about the repairing process in the night with the melatonin, blocking the blue light. I think if there's something important for people to know and to take away, like one of the biggest and most important things is to block the blue light at night, because that is one of the biggest like disruptors to our hormones and our sleep. And obviously if we don't produce, or we don't release melatonin, we don't repair, right? So we don't regenerate, we'll wake up feeling like crap, and then the whole cycle repeats. So the number one thing, if someone wants to do something, is to block the blue light at night, and just make sure that you are living in alignment with the day and night cycles, no matter where you live on the planet.
Oh, I completely completely agree, because I've got like probably 6 pairs of blue blockers, and I really am strict about the phone in the evening, because there's nothing that I couldn't have done work-wise in the day, and I don't need to. I don't actually scroll. I hardly ever do anymore, and I just find something else to do. But also, when I stayed in Atlanta, the room I happened to be in happened to be completely and utterly black, because it was sort of like a box room, and then I just slept like a log there, even though there was all sorts of things that could have woken me up, because the US is really noisy. Like here, there's a few people with hedge cutters, but in the US, the noise is just another level, and the US and the blue light. So when I got back to the UK, I basically bought all this different blacking out stuff, because my bedroom was dark, like, but it wasn't as pitch black.
Yes.
And I went, and it's not expensive. I just found stuff on Amazon. I basically tried to get rid of every single last little bit of photon that can come in.
Yeah.
And I think, again, people think, oh, well, it'd be nice to have the moonlight, but the problem is you're getting everybody else's blue light from their houses,
Yes.
the street
Exactly.
lights, and
Exactly.
it'll keep you awake. And then again, I'm about the fiddling on the phone just before bed. It's just, even like 5 minutes of doing that, you can just whack out your melatonin. Then
Absolutely.
the cortisol dominates, and people say, oh, I keep waking up at 3 or 4 a.m. It must be the perimenopause. And then it's like, no, it's because you keep scrolling on the phone before bed.
Yeah.
So people will blame everything other than their blue light habit, or their technology, or their screen use. And it's like everything, we have to use technology.
Yeah.
It's just part of society, but we don't have to use it all the time.
Overabuse.
Same as all of this crazy food that's around now. Yes, we don't have to put it in our mouths, and luckily we control our phone, and that's the biggest non-native EMF and everything producer. So people do have a lot more power than they realize. And also, I can't emphasize enough the completely black bedroom, because there's a difference between dark and if somebody lives somewhere really rural and it's just you, that's different, because there are benefits to moonlight. But people living somewhere urban, it's not moonlight that's coming in, you're getting all of the but I completely agree that if people do stuff in the day they shouldn't, if you can sleep well, you've got a chance of sort of repairing or undoing it, because sure, people have jobs and they have to sit in offices, and some people they can't be helped, whereas if you can learn to sleep properly and do everything you can to sleep, it does make a huge difference. So yeah, that's a really good point. I completely agree. I think, just to finish off, because we've kind of done so many topics, and even though this, we don't sort of advertise our channels as sort of food channels, I think it's really important. What do you do for a way of eating in Cyprus?
So at the moment, like, I recently just started incorporating some carbohydrates from my environment again. I always try to eat local, so that's a very, very important thing, because that's giving my body signals about my environment. So everything that I buy, the meat or the yogurt or the cheeses or the butter, whatever, it's always local. And the same with the fruits and the vegetables. In the winter time, however, no matter where I am in the world, I still prefer to do a ketogenic diet, because I feel that serves its purpose for that time of the year, and I feel like my body thrives on that. However, last year, or when I went to Costa Rica, I was in Costa Rica for 3 months, because we were planning on living there, actually, and we went to stay there, and it didn't like meet all our expectations, let's say.
Oh no, that's fine. I had that's why there's no such thing as a perfect place, and there is no way I'll be living at the equator. The 30th latitude is plenty. Yes, so carry on, because I think this is really important for people. You can't just bugger off to the equator and expect everything to be all right. But anyway,
exactly.
But again, it can really help lots of other people. We're just saying there's lots of ways to do it. So carry on. So you went to Costa Rica.
Went to Costa Rica, like, carried on doing ketogenic diet. I didn't embrace the foods and all the beautiful things that there were in the environment. And basically, I felt really, really fried and really crap. But there was also a lot of non-native EMF in my environment, because of lots of wires on the streets. They don't have the wires underground, and they were just, the electric wires just running from one house to another. So the EMF felt extremely high, even though we were living right opposite the beach. So the beach was across the road. So I was still getting grounded every day and everything like this, but I felt really, really stimulated and really fried. So I felt the environment in conjunction with the carnivore diet in the summertime, it didn't really serve my body, and it felt like my cortisol was really, really high, even though I was consuming like 1,500 calories on top of what I actually need in terms of a diet. And so you would think in that kind of state, you know, when you're eating sufficient, that you're able to lower your cortisol. But in fact, no, I wasn't able to. And so when we came back here to Cyprus, I still continued my carnivore diet until just maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago. I broke it with starting to eat some watermelon now. And I honestly feel 1,000 times better for doing so. And I feel like I've lost a lot of fluid retention in my body. I feel like the water has moved from the extracellular to the intracellular. It's kind of like moved into the right places where it should be. And also I feel like my stress levels and my sleep have improved as well. So it just shows you how important it is to embrace the seasons when it comes to the eating. But of course, the portion sizing really matters. So when people are eating carnivore in the winter, you can't just assume that you now can eat another 600 calories extra on top with your fruits. Obviously, you have to reduce your fat intake a little bit or your protein to incorporate the carbs, because you can't just all of a sudden double your intake and assume that you are not going to gain weight. This
Oh
is
yeah, because
something that everybody misses.
you'll trigger the Randall cycle as well. And also, I think if people haven't eaten carbs for a long time, you need to introduce them gradually, because if we do
Yes,
become functionally insulin resistant when we fast or do
yes,
keto or carnivore. So it's not about suddenly just dumping a load of carbs. It's just gradual, because I'm the same. When if I've just learned wherever I go in the world, I need to behave how nature does there and eat what the
yes,
people do, not what I think is appropriate, because what do I know? And then Georgia is now was getting ridiculously hot, like 33 degrees. So that's where Sarah and I were sort of exploring what's the best sort of carbohydrates to introduce, because you have to match it with the UVI index. And
yeah,
I've been, you know, I think the ketogenic diet and carnivore has lots of huge power, but also I run labs all the time on myself. And I've noticed if I keep doing keto or carnivore in really hot weather, I get horrible labs, that's because the whole other like world I could talk about me and my hormone tests. And
mm,
you're right that if you try and do strict keto, which I did once when I went to Switzerland in the middle of summer and it was really hot in the UK, I just had the crazy cortisol issues. And also
yes,
we
yeah,
make more cortisol in bright light anyway, just because it's a
yeah,
light driven hormone. And
exactly.
also I don't subscribe to any more of these people who are sort of have cultish behaviors around
Oh,
food, because
oh, yeah, I'm so over that right now. I actually was gonna say about that as well, because I kind of feel like I don't want to be,
no, I don't.
categorized in one thing or the other thing. Yes, I understand that people want to build a tribe
Mm.
of like-minded people and individuals, and that's wonderful. But at the same time, criticizing someone else, if I have decided to go from carnivore, which I thought was the best thing in the world, to introducing fruits again, like I feel that you need to do what's best for you, right? So I think everything has value in the right context. And
Exactly.
exactly as we said about the plant-based diet, even at some point in your life, if you are consuming way too much meat, maybe your methionine is too high, maybe you're not balancing these things out, with glycine. Maybe a plant-based diet for a period of time might be beneficial for you, you know?
Exactly. Or people who culturally say live in places like India and Sri Lanka, it's one of these things. It's all about humans are more sort of adaptive, and I'm always for people, if it's not working, stop doing it. And there's lots of people who run into lots of issues doing plant-based because they're eating processed food and Oreos and
Yes.
ultimate burgers, and then there are people who run into loads of problems with carnivore because they're eating too much. And I can pull out of their labs things like triglyceride, all sorts of things, and I can see, it's not just a free for all. You can't just eat. And also people who say, oh, you can eat as much as you like on keto as long as you don't eat carbs. And there's just all sorts of things that, again, if it's not working, then stop
Yeah,
doing it.
that's
And
so
also
not
be
true.
open-minded about things. Even Ray Peat, who there's lots of useful things I've learned from Ray Peat. I just don't agree with everything. So
Yeah.
I'll approach things with an open mind. And it's like horses for courses, or it depends on the context. Like the environments we live in are really different, and we're different genders, and slightly different ages. So of course we're going to be having a different way of eating. And and like I always say, there's lots of rights, and it depends on the context. And also I just think
Yes.
it just spreads unpleasant behavior. If people want to be Ray-Peat or pro-metabolic or carnivore or keto or plant-based or vegetarian, just let them, you know leave
Yeah.
leave
everyone
eat
can do their
strict.
thing, you know. It's just, I
Yeah,
think what's important, as we discussed about the exercise aspect,
yeah,
is extract what's useful and discard the rest. So
yes.
I think that visiting extremes is extremely important,
Mm.
for the reason being that it teaches you where the extremes are.
Oh, absolutely.
If you've never experienced the extreme, how can you know where is the balance, where is the center for you? It's the same with exercise. If you never push yourself to your limit, to your real limit, to the point where you feel like, you know, you're gonna puke, or like you can't do it anymore, how can you know what is too much and what's too less, you know?
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point, because I'm really interested, and I think you are also, in sort of more spiritual things about the right hand and the left hand side of the tree of life. And people think they're just meant to go up the middle or the middle pillar, but you're always meant to visit both extremes. And there's no good or evil. It's just different dualities or polarities, because you can't possibly know what's the center if you unless you've and that's when I used to first teach Pilates. You know, when you ask people to move their pelvis in a clock, you're just basically showing them everything that's not
Yeah,
neutral. So, or you know, then you can find center or
yeah,
neutral. So that, I think there's lots of principles that I've learned that, you know, you can apply the same principle over and over to different aspects. And even with extreme diets, I've done all sorts of things, and you can't possibly know unless you try it and then run labs or look in the mirror or see how what your mood's like. And because unexpected things turn out to work. And also, I like to understand, you know, why does this work, or, you know, why do people like doing this, or what happens biologically. So I think I love that, you know, be curious about extremes. And also, the body's really resilient anyway. So,
mm,
you know,
mm.
we're not saying to people to go out and break
No,
themselves.
of
We're just saying to
course not. Everyone
explore.
has to do it in their own, like in their own way, whatever they are most comfortable in doing, you know. Like I would obviously never tell somebody to train until you faint or anything like that. Everyone has to train at their own responsibility. But the thing is that you have to, you know, you need to trust and build that relationship with yourself, right? So it's all about finding yourself when you, whether you are exercising or trying to figure out your eating routine or you're sleeping, you are learning about yourself. It's about self-development. And by caring about yourself, you can be a better person. If you're a better person, you treat others better. So it all starts with the self.
Exactly. And also to be independent. I don't that one thing I really can't stand anymore is being dependent on other people. And I try to help people to be more independent themselves. Like, I don't like, people go crazy when I say there isn't a protocol, there isn't a blueprint, because it just depends.
Yeah.
And, you know, and also with anything, you know, people can be experiment, you know, gently with themselves. They don't always need to have their hand held, because sometimes, you know, that's a good way to have their bank account sort of depleted. And, you know, people have to have the confidence to think, yeah, actually I know enough, and I'm just going to just try this based on what I've
Mm.
learned from reading or studying, and to be
Yeah.
independent as well. And you don't always, you know, people can run their own labs in any country. You don't have to have somebody to do it for you. And again, you know, you can eat, like you said, you don't have to follow somebody else's eating plan, just work out.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
like, I love that one, trust yourself, because I really have, and you know, just, and that just sort of builds self-confidence as well, and also builds being free. You know, you don't feel like you depend on people all the time. You can,
Mhm.
you know, be self-sufficient, which then leads to other levels of being independent and self-sufficient.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why I think that for you and me, like why we love entrepreneurship is because, you know, we've created the life that we want. You know, we assist people to, you know, heal and to get better in a natural way. And the thing is that we're showing people that they have the power to do
Mm.
so. So we are giving individuals the tools to be able to actually do the thing. But it's like what I love to say is I can climb the mountain of success with you, but I'm not going to carry your backpack. So what, so what I mean by that is that, you know, you need to be the one who's going to put in the work. I'm going to guide you and I'm going to take you. I'm going to go with you all the way, but you need to be willing to put in the work and the steps to be able to build that consistency and to actually see what actually happens when you follow the protocol, you know?
Oh, lovely. Someone's just said one of their favorite mantras, Joanna said, is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that's one of my favorite. No, I agree with you. I can't. That's the thing. I can't do it for people. I can't, do the movement for them. And sure, I know loads about biochemistry, but there is no magic pill. There's no magic supplement. Of course, supplements have their place, like everything, but they're not the root. So I'm not against them.
Yeah.
And it's like I can't write. I can't. People have to sort of. You have to help yourself, but also I can help them to help themselves as well.
Yes.
Too. And there's so many. Sure, there's things you can do like hypnosis that I do, but again, I think part of that it's just that's a whole other, like, I could talk for an hour about what that might be, but still it sometimes is just getting somebody over the barrier that they think that I help them overcome the binge eating, but really they were just ready to do it themselves. And
Yes.
it was all about, that happened to be the thing which got them ready, but psychologically they were already had their meals ready. They just needed, like you said, it was to do it with me in the beginning, and then they're off on their own. But
Yes.
and also it's about expectation. If people believe in hypnosis, and goodness knows what it is, the more I learn about spirituality, the more confused I get. But to them, it was something that was part of the journey. And then they know that I can't hypnotize them every day. They have to do the rest of it by themselves. So there's all sorts of interesting like approaches. And I like that one about you can climb the mountain with people, but you can't give them a piggyback up the mountain either, or
No.
carry that. Because some people want the piggyback up the mountain, not just
Yes.
the
Yeah.
baggage
Exactly.
carrying.
I found that the people who I've had the most success with in terms of clients, whether that's with nutrition, exercise, or everything together, holistic, lifestyle practices, yeah, are the ones who already predetermined in advance before they came to me that
Mm,
they are ready to make a
mm,
change. They are determined. And because of that, they are willing to be consistent and to do everything that we discuss, during our coaching. And because of that, then people are able to see success because they are committed and they are disciplined and consistent. Because it's not about doing a massive amount and quitting. It's about doing a little bit every day,
mm.
because what you do on a daily basis has a way bigger impact in your life than what you do one time and you do it big.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The compounding effect. Someone's just saying, feeling amazingly entangled all the time. So from oh yeah, I thought it says Australia. So yes, I thought it said Austria then. So yes, Australia. So yes, that's another interesting country for doing quantum biology. And so I think we're going to have to call it a day today, because I know people are going to come out with their gardening equipment, and also I need to do a few things. So it's been a real pleasure talking to you, and I'm sure we'll do this again.
It's been a
Thank you.
pleasure, Sarah. Thank you
Yes,
so
great
much. Enjoy
fun.
the
Thank
rest of
you.
your day and your movement in the garden.
Oh yes, I will. Dealing with my jungle.
Amazing, amazing.
Thanks.
Take care. It was a pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.